Hi, I'm Scott Pollard of the Attacca Percussion Group, and I am joined here with Mark Denitz and Adam Green. Today we're here giving a clinic for high school percussionists about some of the unique challenges faced when you play in mallet ensembles, especially, as you can see in this case, when you have more than one player on an instrument. More specifically within that realm, I want to talk about the process of choosing mallets, especially when you're trying to do legato playing, very soft playing, and when you're playing rolls on the marimba. Several things you always need to think about when you first get a piece of music before you even pick up a mallet. The first thing in this case, we're going to be performing Samuel Barber's Adagio for strings. Obviously this is not a string instrument, so already you know it's some sort of arrangement or transcription. This is an arrangement that I did 4 or 5 years ago, and just to tell you a brief little history about the work, Barber originally wrote it as the Adagio movement from his string quartet. The version that my arrangement comes from is the full string orchestral version, which is probably what most people are familiar with. Also, Barber was clearly very fond of the piece because later on in his life he arranged it for a full chorus. Now, again, this is all stuff you're thinking about before you even pick up a mallet. One of the very distinct similarities between string players and vocalists are that they have the ability to sustain sound and to play legato, by which I mean they're able to change pitches without having to re-attack. Now in percussion, of course, we're not able to do that. We have to play a roll. So automatically we're thinking we're going to be, generally we're going to be thinking this entire piece is rolling, so we're going to be using softer mallets. Also a very unique challenge to this piece is that it covers a very wide dynamic range as well as a wide range of pitches. You'll find that Mark, myself, and Adam all cover at least 3.5 octaves of the instrument at any given time. Mark spends most of his time down there, but later on in the piece he's way up at the very top of the register. I'll actually discuss that specific challenge in a moment. So those are things you've thought of before you've ever even selected a mallet. Now let's come to the actual process of choosing the mallets. I can tell you that as endorsers of Vic Firth, it's very convenient that we pretty much have every single mallet in our ensemble, in our repertoire, that Vic Firth makes. Every sort of yarn mallet, cord mallet. So what we literally did was we sat in Mark's basement and laid out every single mallet from every single series, and it was a huge array. We had stuff on the keyboard, stuff on the vibraphone, stuff everywhere. On the carpet, not on the nasty basement floor. From that point on, there's actually a process of trial and error that we went through individually and collectively. The individual part is I'm looking at the range that I play in, the type of sounds I want to get, and I actually go to the keyboard and play. So I make an individual choice. That's not enough though when you're playing with more than one person, especially on one instrument. So what we did is I would pick out my mallets, Mark would pick out his, Adam would pick out his, and then we would trial and error and see how it fits in the whole unison. Point being that I need to balance between him, and vice versa. So each person weighs in, whether we like it or not, each person weighs in, and we have to come to a decision that we like individually as well as collectively. You notice that Mark, again this is, imagine we're trying to replicate the sounds of a full string orchestra. So Mark's lowest mallet mostly plays in the range of the string basses. So he's chosen the Vic Firth Pesante series, which is their darkest, heaviest series. And he's using that for one outer mallet in his left hand to replicate the string basses and the lowest registers of the string orchestra. He's chosen his other three, those are the Pesante M201s. The other 3 mallets are from the Giff Howarth series. It's the M160s, and those are a little bit lighter, have a slightly different core, slightly different kind of yarn, and it's going to allow him to travel all the way up the keyboard and get still continue to hear pitches. Sometimes if you play with very heavy mallets at the top of the keyboard, you'll hear a very thumpy sound or a lot of the frame and not so much pitch. So my job as playing chords and harmonies with Mark is to try to balance him. So I mostly chose my mallets to balance his Giff Howarth. So I've chosen mine from the Virtuoso series. These are the M210s, and they again are a little bit lighter mallet. Give you quite a bit of pitch, not quite as much fundamental, and again it's going to allow me to balance between Mark when he's playing bass and cello lines and when Adam is playing violin lines. I tend to be in the range of the upper cellos and violas, so I wanted something again to give me that flexibility. Now Adam, who is mostly replicating the violins as we mentioned, has also chosen from the same series as me, the Virtuoso series, and these are the M212s, which is just two steps harder. Again, that's going to allow him to have the presence he wants, and when he goes especially to the top of the instrument, to really have some punch without being, again, heavy and bulky and cumbersome. let's see, the next thing I want to actually do is demonstrate how all three of these go together, where I'm sort of playing part of the bass line and part of a counter melody against Adam's melody. So we're going to play the first excerpt from Adagio for strings. That's one example of that. Hopefully you're able to hear the balance, and that at no point do any one of us stick out more than any other. Again, it's very chordal, trying to replicate the sound of a full string orchestra. Okay, now that we've made our mallet choices and we've demonstrated an example, I want to talk about a very unique question that comes up with mallet players that no other instrument really has to deal with, usually not even some of the other percussion. And that's the question of mallet changes. When is it appropriate to change mallets? When is it not appropriate? You can see, and you'll see when this next excerpt, that all three of us are going to start at the very highest range of the instrument. And this was something that we have been back and forth with each other on. We've gotten audience feedback about this question. And basically the question was, I don't know if you're familiar with the piece, you know that there's a very climactic moment. It's very intense. There's very passionate. We're playing. We're really into it. And we're at the top of the keyboard. It's the loudest playing that we do. And we were finding that with these particular mallets initially, with our initial mallet choices, we were getting that thumpy sound. We weren't getting the volume and the punch that we wanted at the top of the keyboard. So we found different places to change mallets so that when we got to the top, it could be something very loud. But then right after that is the softest, most chordal playing in the entire piece. And then what we found is that we made a mallet change, and during that intense grand pause, all that silence, we were rattling around, picking up sticks, and it was actually ruining the effect of the piece. So after debating, trying different things, different mallets, we ultimately decided on these mallet choices. And what you will notice is that Mark and I add a mallet to our collection that's from the same series that we're already using, but we try to do it in a way that's subtle and to keep the intensity of the piece alive. So that's a case where we actually chose not to change mallets and to just deal with the fact that maybe we weren't getting quite as much punch, but we kept the intensity alive. Now we're going to perform Barbara's Adagio for strings. Just want to give you a couple things to think about while we're performing. First of all is I want you to think about roll speeds. In general, young percussionists see roll and they think fast and furious, got to play as fast as possible. You'll notice that we, during the course of the piece and in various different registers we play in, will use all different types of roll speeds. Again, that's an advantage of not playing a solo. If you're playing solo, you generally want to sustain the sound, you got to roll a little faster. When you've got, in this case, 7, 8, 9, 10 mallets at any one time, the instrument's going to speak a lot more, the resonators are really going to work for you, so we don't necessarily roll as fast. The other thing is to think about different ways of playing crescendo and decrescendo. Adam especially, I want you to watch him as he plays. Two different ways that he achieves a crescendo is by starting in different parts of the bar. Adam, if you would just start at the very beginning of the piece and show how, instead of starting directly over the resonator, he creates a crescendo without playing any louder by starting away from the resonator and then moving towards the resonator. This is how that demonstrates. It's very subtle, and that's about as loud as he plays. But you could hear that's, again, a way that a string player can take a bow and just slowly start to activate the sound. We have to roll, of course, so automatically you're going to hear something. But from a distance, you can see that doesn't really speak right away. One other way to do it, if you demonstrate as well, is to start, instead of playing on the fat part of the mallet, actually start on the edges of the mallet so you're not getting as much sound. And then, again, without playing any harder, he can shift to the fatter part of the mallet and, again, creates a crescendo. and a decrescendo. Thank you, Adam. Last thing, again, you'll notice there are no music stands in front of us, which presents an interesting challenge when we play it, that we have to really know the music, but that was something we agreed wholeheartedly we had to do because there's a lot of interplay, we're focusing on each other, that takes our head out of the music, we focus on our mallets and we focus on what each other are doing, which when you're playing in an ensemble, that's always the most important thing. And remember, there's no conductor in this, so there's no one to keep the beat. That allows us the freedom to give cues and to basically conduct ourselves as a trio. So, without further ado, this is Samuel Barber's Adagio for Strings.